I wanted just to share thoughts regarding what's to come in the time between now and our next board meeting, which really is 6 weeks away. And I think we are turning a corner. This is a year's time into our administration, a year's time into our board. And I wanted just to briefly talk about what I think the critical distinction will be between the year that has just passed and the year that is to come, and thus forthcoming announcements that will be made over the course of the time. The last year has been spent doing monumental work, building on what I would call foundational change that this board has been working on for some years, certainly predating my time here. There were fundamental changes, such as the Recovery School District, that created a structural shift in our state and the way that our state's education system is built. Last year, in the last year alone, we adjusted our entire labor framework through the institution of the Compass regulations and through the institution of Act 1. We redid the way that finances and school choice are thought about and the rights of kids to attend the best educational option for them using public tax dollars through Act 2 and through the scholarship program, our charter program, and our course choice program. We put in place regulations that remove undue burdens from educators, including many of the changes supported yesterday in Bulletin 741. With Act 3 and the regulations set in motion by this board, we created an early childhood education network that brings the governance of a fragmented early childhood system under one governance structure, thus uniting the finances, the accountability, the enrollment, and the professional development across all programs, birth to 5 education. These are extremely important and necessary fundamental elements of reform. They are structural elements of reform. And members, what I would ask is that you consider the next year a shift from the fundamental structure, the framework, toward the substance that fills that framework. And I think that's a critical shift for us to consider. It doesn't mean anything we're going to be doing is less controversial. It doesn't mean it's going to be less difficult or less complex. In fact, I think it gets more difficult and more complex. But I want to urge our thinking toward that way, away from the framework and toward the substance that the framework enables. And let me talk briefly then about things that I think you'll hear me talking about more over the course of the time between this meeting and our next meeting. First, and Ms. Beebe has mentioned this on several occasions, is the idea that we need to shift away from using our tools, our academic tools like our standards, our tests, our Compass system as separate pieces into one system of academic support for our educators. You will hear us speak over the course of the next several weeks about an academic support strategy that will include detailed use of and detailed guides on and sample assessment items to help our educators make an exact transition in terms of what is shifting on the standards and how it relates, or sorry, on the tests, and how it relates to the new Common Core standards. You'll hear us talk about, in that academic support strategy, a specific piece of curricular guidance to give every educator in our state an understanding of how curriculum is shifting, a sample scope and sequence and sample units that they can use to organize their standards, while at the same time shifting away from the reliance on textbooks and the reliance on a prescriptive, comprehensive curriculum to empower our educators. Guidance, but also empowerment to learn these new standards. We laid the groundwork yesterday for Compass shifts that allow for the use of Compass as not just a tool to grade teachers on the polls, but to really give specific guidance to the vast number of teachers who are in the middle on classroom practice. You'll also hear us talking about, as part of the support strategy, our network teams focus on district systems to make sure that districts have their professional development and their assessment plans aligned with the Common Core and the Compass systems. And finally, the development of a cadre of literally thousands of lead teachers across the state that have, at the schoolhouse level, the ability to speak as fluently about these issues as any department staff, as any national expert, trained themselves on how to facilitate the change process at the school level, taking it to the school so that there actually is a support mechanism on the Common Core and Compass for every school in our state. So I want to preview that academic strategy so you understand how these tools come together to form the substance within the framework. Also, within the pre-K framework, we'll be filling in, as we discussed yesterday, the substance of our pre-K pilots and really thus a projection of what Act 3 is going to manifest into. Our course choice system will manifest itself in a specific vision of career education over the course of the next year, and I want to emphasize that we have to make career education something that is a palatable, viable, and relevant option for more kids than it is today in our state. We're losing too many kids, but we're also seeing economic opportunities develop on a daily basis, including today's announcement of an enormous facility that will, by 2017, provide hundreds of jobs in the Lake Charles area. And we need to be prepared for these. We need our education system to be prepared for these opportunities, and we'll be talking more about career education. Technology, and a vision that's not just about one computer for every child, but about the technology infrastructure that's necessary to support all of these changes across our state. We need a wholesale technology upgrade in every school district, and statewide to support our K-12 education system. And finally, special education. If we're talking about substance, we need to pay close heed to how, for children with disabilities, all of these changes impact them and how we can use them to create better outcomes with students with disabilities, and making that a key priority within the substance of our work. So I wanted just to share with you, the concept that we're going to move from the fundamental changes, the structural changes, to a vision of the substance of classroom impact by bringing them into combination with one another, and that you should expect us to be talking more about these, both with you individually as well as with our schools and with the public. Mr. President, I thank you for the opportunity to share those thoughts. They made some adjustments to the Compass system that really need to make Compass the best professional development tool possible. That's really what this is about. It's about, giving an evaluation, but in light of that evaluation, you got to get better at your job, and we've got to help our teachers and our principals develop to be as good as they can be, and that's what BESE did today.
And how is this going to affect teachers throughout the entire spectrum?
I think first it's going to provide greater clarity for teachers. We're going to give them at the beginning of the year clear information as to how well their kids are doing, what we expect their kids to achieve this year. At the middle of the year, we're going to give them videos to show them what practice that's strong and weak looks like in the classroom. At the end of the year, we're going to give them clear reports on how well did your kids actually do, and thus, how well did you do.
Are you excited about the potential of this program?
Oh, I'm so excited about it. I mean, Compass is having a dramatic effect. We've got more than 10,000 observations that have been logged. 75,000 goals have been set for kids across the state. So we're taking big strides forward. But we've got to make sure that it is really clear. We've got to make sure we provide feedback to as many teachers as possible. And that's what teachers have been asking for, and that's what we're responding with.
You've been meeting with teachers throughout the state. What kind of reaction and feedback have you got?
I think teachers have said, look, we know that this is a good thing. We're not afraid of accountability, but we want to understand it. We want it to be clear. Second of all, we want to make sure we're getting as much feedback on our performance as possible. And we want to make sure at the end of the year, therefore, we understand this is why we were evaluated in a certain way. That all makes sense. We've got to put into place some systems to make it happen, and BESE chose to do that this week.
BESE also took some action in terms of flexibility regarding school counselors and libraries and physical education. Tell us about that.
Well, we're holding our educators as accountable for outcomes as they could be. They've got to achieve with our kids. At the same time, we've got all these rules on the books that tell them this is exactly how you need to do this, whether it's your summer school plan or your ID badge or the way you staff your school or what have you. And our point is this: if educators are this accountable for outcomes, let's empower them to make the plans rather than thinking that the plans for how they get to those outcomes should come from someone in a room in Baton Rouge.